Baltimore Ravens have been pretty exceptionally healthy these last 2 seasons, but it was a long road to get there in the years prior, and a former Baltimore Ravens running back did not hold back on that situation. We talk about that and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, plus more. And on today's show, we have a lot to dive into. Former Ravens running back, he did not hold back on his experience with the Ravens and some of their workout regimens, training, strength. And we do know there is some controversy behind that over the last couple of years prior to 2023 and 2024. Also, the Ravens, quote unquote, lost out on Micah Parsons, but were they really going to get involved anyway? We'll dive into that situation. And then, of course, the Ravens roster is finalized. Kyle Hamilton signed an extension. There's a lot to dive into there as well. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, as well as thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Here with me today, Jake Louque of the Exit 52 podcast returns. And Jake, I don't know if you heard the news, but Garrett Dellinger is signed to the Browns practice squad, which I think is the biggest news coming out of the NFL on Thursday.
Yeah, no, that and Tyler Huntley returning to the Baltimore practice squad. So it seems just like a true couple shots across the bow here in the AFC North. Just the power scales are just tilting back and forth in a big way.
Yeah, and that's what it is. All these big time moves, obviously, like those. And of course, we'll get to the actual big move of the day on Thursday in the second part of the show, because before it actually happened, the Ravens, they were named as a team that were potentially involved. So that's something we're going to dive into. But Jake, I want to start off. The Ravens over the last couple of years have been pretty healthy outside of a few guys. There's been a name here or a name there that's been lost for the season or has a decently significant injury. But compared to what we had seen from that team over the last handful of seasons, it's been a nice breath of fresh air. Obviously, knock on wood, that is going to be the case again this year. But Mike Davis, who was obviously part of the Ravens during that 2022 season, he did not hold back on his experience with the Ravens' strength, conditioning, just, program in general. And he had a lot to talk about. This was over on the Raw Room. It features a bunch of other former NFL players, King Dunlap, Jalen Collins, etc. And he essentially said that the Ravens were the reason why he wanted to retire. He said that it was bad when it came to his strength, conditioning, practice, like the weight room. Now, he did mention that they treat their players right. They treat everybody right. But he had such a bad experience with that program. He talked about how you had to get your 2 workouts in before Wednesday, or else you were screwed. You were going to get hurt. This obviously dates back to the Steve Saunders days. Steve Saunders was fired after the season Mike Davis spent in Baltimore. I think it's interesting the shift that the Ravens have had. It's, during the Steve Saunders era versus after the Steve Saunders era. I think everybody kind of figured out what the common denominator was. And I think the proof's in the pudding, kind of, with how these players are speaking about it, plus the results we've seen on the field. Is that pretty much where you are with it?
Yeah, it is. But I also think it's a little bit of a philosophical shift from Harbaugh, too. Like, I feel like everyone, it's conveniently, you can blame Steve Saunders. And I think his practices, obviously, it bore out that they were pretty extreme and they got a lot of guys hurt. And they held on to him for longer than they should have. But even that goes into Harbaugh. I think it all came down from him. I think you still, to this day, hear him kind of joking and belly aching about the fact that they can't practice as hard as they used to. He was getting in, a couple of years in a row, he's getting fined by the NFLPA for kind of overdoing it in practice a little bit. So I think it was as much as you can pin a lot of it on Saunders. And I think I certainly would. I think Harbaugh liked Saunders. I think he liked what he was doing. I think he likes a program where guys are kind of, you're overworked in practice and you're overworked throughout the week. And then on game day, that kind of just feels like where you're having your fun. I think that is sort of the idea of it, but it's maybe a bit of an antiquated idea. And it definitely there were antiquated ideas that were very literally hurting them. Like how many years have they had? It was at least a couple within a span of maybe 4 or 5 where just, you have 17 guys on the IR toward the end of the season, and you're starting Robert Jackson at cornerback, and he's getting toasted by Devontae Adams. Yeah. And it's like, man, I know you want to have this old school, like, guys locking horns and iron sharpening iron, but it's a new day, and like guys take care of a lot of that on their own. I feel like they have their own sort of personal training staff that's taking care of them, and their bodies are super optimized to the point that they're almost like F1 cars where they're completely made for just pure optimization, top speed, top performance. But if they were to like hit anything, then damage is going to be felt instantly. I feel like it's kind of similar with NFL players where like, yeah, they're super optimized and they're super like twitched up and everything, but that makes those collisions a lot harder on their bodies. And it's just like, even the way that the rules have changed, obviously it's not as violent of a sport in that way, but I feel like the sport is just as violent as it's ever been in that fashion. So I think it's, to tie a bow on all of it, I think it's a philosophical shift from Harbaugh more than anything. And I think it's a good one. And he probably made it a little bit too late, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and we know the Ravens sometimes can hold on to guys for a little too long. Obviously, there was the very big controversy about Greg Roman, which is a whole different conversation. Should he have been let go the year prior? Was it enough to keep him for an extra year? But we've seen also with you mentioning, and I agree, like it's not just all on Saunders, but I think that's where everybody points the finger because it's like, oh, there's so clearly controversy here. But we've seen it with like moving the practices from the morning to the afternoon. And I think obviously they've taken an approach with some of these guys, like even just Jaire Alexander, where they're not saying, hey, like he's chomping at the bit, but they're saying, no, let's just make sure you're good. That approach, I think, is better for the team in general right now. And Davis kind of gave an inside look into the conditioning test. And obviously that's one of the big, I don't want to say controversies, but it's certainly a storyline when it comes to the Ravens, where he said that he loved Baltimore. He loved the people there, the coach, all that stuff. But the strength conditioning, that all was tough, he said. And he said as a vet, he knows he's not in bad shape. And he said the conditioning test is 300-yard shuttles, 25-yard ones, and then 6 of those. And another former player was like, we had to do it twice in Los Angeles. And he wasn't like, it wasn't registering to him that they had to do it 6 times. And by the time it did, he's like, wait, 6 of these? You got to do 6? He said there was a 3-minute break. The Rams, I think it was a former Rams player who said it. But, that conditioning test is one, Ben Cleveland has struggled with it, and he is not the only one. I think that's just the most prominent example, considering I think Ben Cleveland is not a practice player. He is more of a game day player. But that's kind of the thing you talked about with like, they're going to work you hard at practice, Jake. And if you don't show you can do it in practice, they're not going to necessarily reward you on the field during game day. And for a guy like Ben Cleveland, who clearly there's been multiple reports and rumors and whatnot about Cleveland in practice, the Ravens' philosophy does not favor those guys.
No, it certainly doesn't. And yeah, I mean, man, you look at what's going on with Cleveland right now. I mean, people are still a lot of belly aching. Should he be starting over Faalele and all that conversation? And yeah, I don't know, man. I think like ultimately the proof would be in the pudding if we were ever to have them relax things a little bit and sort of let guys have their talent be more the deciding factor than their habits and their conditioning tests and all of that. But I guess we'll never know until we see it. And I feel like I said, as much as Harbaugh has changed over the years, it's not as much the fire and brimstone as when he first came in. You're going to fall in line behind me. He has changed a lot, and he's much more a player's coach now, but I feel like there are still certain things that he's going to hang on to. And I feel like that kind of old school iron sharpens iron, practice like you play mentality, that's probably never going to go away. And he's going to continue to push the limits as much as he can. But thankfully he did get rid of Steve Saunders, and that I feel like that kind of maybe did clean some things up for them.
Yeah, and they did a whole deep dive. I remember it was a couple of years ago, they kind of illustrated what they were doing, and I think that a lot of those changes have been for the better. But I mean, you're right. Sometimes guys will just hold on to certain stuff, and that's probably one of them. In terms of the injury situation, in terms of the roster, Jake, we know that they're stacked. The roster was finalized on Tuesday. 3 undrafted guys make the roster. And in my opinion, I'm feeling pretty good about them being able to weather certain injuries if they happen. Obviously, again, I'm knocking on wood. We're not going to manifest it. We're knocking on wood that does not happen. But I'm going to take Lamar Jackson and Kyle Hamilton out of the conversation because I think those are the players that, like, there's not another Lamar Jackson. There's not another Kyle Hamilton. And there aren't, there's not another of a lot of other players on the roster too. But is there one player not named Lamar, not named Kyle Hamilton, that you'd be most worried about if the Ravens lost, that the Ravens don't have, whether it's adequate depth or a quality replacement player behind them? I tend to lean offensive line, and honestly, you could name a number of them there, but is there any other opinion you have?
Yeah, no, that's kind of just where I went, was offensive line. I mean, it just feels a little house of cardsy to me. Like, I understand you drafted Emory Jones, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? I'm not really sure. It's kind of moot point with him not being healthy right now anyways. Like you said, I mean, Dellinger, he's gone. Maybe he could have been a developmental piece for you if you kept him on the practice squad or whatever that might have been. A couple of sort of vet pickups that you've had throughout the offseason that are kind of a little bit more, like you said, just depth pieces that you're probably hoping not to have to rely on. Like, I don't know, man, if Ronnie Stanley goes down, what do? Do you kick Rosengarten over there and kind of hope for the best that A, he figures it out, and B, you're okay at right tackle? I feel like they'd maybe be able to figure it out for like a couple of game stretch, but like if something big were to happen to a Stanley, or he'd be out for the year, God forbid, then yeah, I think you'd be in pretty bad shape.
I don't want to say weaknesses, but some of the stuff that Patrick McCary masked, being able to play all 5 positions as well as he was, and he wasn't like a star top offensive lineman, although I guess, who was it? Von Miller, was he the one a couple of years ago that said McCary was one of the toughest guys he's had to face? So again, he had the praise, but being able to play all 5 positions, at least to the level that he did, was a blessing for the Ravens. And you don't necessarily have that anymore. I think Corey Bullock, you can play him at center and guard, but I'm not kicking Corey Bullock out to tackle here if a Stanley were to go down. I think for Linderbaum, if he were to go down, again, that's tough, and you do have a downgrade in Bullock, but I trust Bullock more than I trust the depth that they have at the tackle spots.
Well, they had to, in Falele's rookie season, I think it was that Patriots game at New England, they had to get Falele in there at left tackle, just on an island as a 4th round rookie with pretty much no chops at that point. Like, people think he is something to watch now. That was something else. And they wind up winning that game in a shootout. But yeah, man, I don't know. Maybe you do that just for the sheer size and hope that he can protect Lamar's blind side in that nightmare scenario. But yeah, you'd have to get creative and you'd have to do it pretty quickly. But I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast with injuries, man. It's like, well, if they go down for a couple of games, you're probably fine. And if they're gone for the whole season, well, yeah, you're probably screwed. And that's just the way that it works.
For me, there's a lot of different stuff with the injuries. And at this point, you just have to hope for health, because we've seen, whether it's Ravens or other teams, those seasons get derailed by that. Obviously, last couple of years, as I mentioned, they have been pretty healthy, and they're deep at a lot of different spots. They're also deep at the edge position, but one star edge guy is not going to make his way to Baltimore. That lasted about 2 hours before he ended up getting traded to the Green Bay Packers. So we're going to talk about the Ravens, quote unquote, losing out on Micah Parsons and why they probably were never really in on it anyway. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Locked On Ravens fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code touchdown and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought that it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code touchdown for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code touchdown. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Jake Louque still here with you, talking Ravens football. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens, as we dive into everything. This team hopefully going to win a Super Bowl this season, but of course they have a long way to go before they hopefully get to that goal. Jake, Micah Parsons would have probably been as close to a surefire Super Bowl win as the Ravens could have got if they were to move and get that guy in, but unfortunately, or maybe for some fortunately, the Micah Parsons is not a member of the Ravens. He gets traded to the Green Bay Packers after there was speculation. Jamie Fowler reported that in league circles, the Ravens were a team that made sense to people. But we know that the move itself doesn't line up with what Eric DeCosta in that Ravens organization does. Roquan Smith, we were talking about trading a second-round pick for Roquan was like this, oh, wow, what a trade for the Ravens. They moved off of a second-round pick. The deal for the Cowboys and Parsons and the Packers was 2 firsts and Kenny Clark, who is a heck of a player, by the way, on that defensive line. So 2 firsts and a good player for Parsons. Now, Parsons brings a whole level of just greatness to a defense. Him and Mike Green rushing the passer for years to come would have probably felt like a dream. But The Packers also signed him to a deal worth $47 million per season, the highest for a non-quarterback in NFL history. And Jake, we already know the Ravens have a lot of other guys that got to get under contract. If they had made that deal, would have probably meant at least 3 or 4 of those guys up for extensions would not be in Baltimore. What side were you on? Did you want him, or were you cool with not having him?
I mean, it's always like this happens every single time. It's just right player, right price. And I mean, this is absolutely the right player. I mean, you're not going to talk me out of that.
Yeah.
Right price is tough. I mean, if you could get him off of the price point that Green Bay had by a little bit, maybe. Like if you're talking to me about like, let's say 1 first-round pick, and then a lot of people are throwing out Owe as like a potential throw in there, I think that would probably actually make a good deal of sense for both parties. But then you're right, man. It's like, well, do you want to do that? And then no Tyler Linderbaum and maybe no Zay Flowers and some of these other guys Travis Jones, some of these guys that you have to sign going forward. There's a good chance that if you make this deal, maybe you're only hanging on to one of them optimistically. So I don't know. That's a pretty big asking, price to begin with. And then it's just the fact that I think you're right in that it was never going to happen just because of how much they tend to value first-round picks. When's the last time they didn't pick in the first round? I'm trying to remember.
It's been a while.
Was it the Tebow year when they traded out?
I think it might. I'm going to look it up, but I think it was the Tebow year.
Yeah, I think they just and DaCosta, I'm pretty sure he has said publicly, like, we value our first round picks. Like, we don't part with them. We look at that as like an automatic starter for us that year. And then obviously that's a cheap starter for at least 4 years, probably 5 if you're going to pick up that option, and hopefully for the long term beyond that. So they just really value them. And I think like Dallas was absolutely right not to budge off of 2 first-round picks for Parsons. And I don't know. I think Dallas did okay for the long term. I really don't get this from Jerry Jones's perspective, who I think I saw Trill Withers on Twitter say, tweeting Jerry 97 years old and playing the long game. That really tickled me. I really like this is baffling from a Dallas perspective. But yeah, to keep with the Ravens perspective, like, you're kind of, you're certainly in a win now, Super Bowl win now mode. And this would be absolutely pushing your chips all the way in on this year. But like where I'm sitting, they kind of already did that move with Mike Green, like, and all the kind of PR flack that they were going to have to take for picking a guy like that. And it seems like at this point, they might have already weathered that storm a little bit. And hopefully he doesn't do anything, or, nothing really happens going forward in that front. And it's just smooth sailing from here on out in that respect. And you got what is hopefully going to be a big time player with a 2nd-round pick there. And it just feels like even without that move, they were kind of already pretty much right there. You make that move, I feel like they're arguably the best roster in the AFC. It'd have been really nice to go and make this move and have it pretty much be no doubt. But I don't know. The way I look at it, Kevin, is it's never 100% like a guarantee in an AFC that has Patrick Mahomes. And like, I know it's like, oh, the Chiefs, they're boring. We're over them. Taylor Swift, this, that, and the other. But it's like they're there every single year for a reason. And like, I don't know, pushing all your chips in and giving up 2 first-round picks and just kind of like really trying to do that. Can you imagine the devastation if they did that and then this was not the year that they get over the hump? I don't know, man. It's that would be tough. And you'd be leveraging a lot and probably, like I said, losing out on Flowers, Linderbaum, Travis Jones, those kind of guys. So I don't know. It would have been a big swing. It would have been exciting to see, but overall, I'm not really that heartbroken that it didn't happen for them.
Yeah, and I think to me, the heartbreaker, at least lack of it for me, comes from the fact that I just didn't expect it to happen. There was not a scenario for me where I can see the Ravens. And look, we've seen the Ravens, and they'll surprise you. They'll pull one out of their hat. You're like, oh, I'm not seeing this coming. But at this point, you're right. You kind of mentioned it's essentially, would you value Micah Parsons or Travis Jones, Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, Tyler Linderbaum, plus 2 controllable first-round pick starters for 4, maybe 5 seasons? That's like 6 or 7 players to 1. But we know, Jake, sometimes the Ravens, they value veterans, and we know that early in the season. We've seen it with the offensive line. We've seen it on the defensive side of the ball. Lamar didn't start his rookie year, even though he did need some time to sit behind Joe Flacco and kind of take things in. For Mike Green, he showed it in the preseason. He won a bunch. The stats are out there, advanced. And while he didn't necessarily fill out the box score or anything, you could see how dominant he was on the field. Kyle Van Noy is going to get snaps. Odafe always going to get snaps. Tavius Robinson, the coaching staff has been extremely high on Tavius Robinson, and he is going to get snaps. What's the role for you early for Mike Green? Did he do enough to carve out a snap share, or do you think that it's going to take maybe a couple weeks or a month or so to really get him fully in that rotation?
I don't know, man. He looked, pretty explosive to me in the preseason, and really it was the way that Chuck Smith spoke about him publicly, like in that kind of glowing fashion that this guy's everything we expected. The explosion is off the charts. I mean, you saw the picture of him going viral with like the bend where his body is completely parallel and his foot is just planted firmly in the ground. It's like, man, are we looking at like a potential like Aldon Smith situation? Hopefully it would work out like longer term in the way that Aldon Smith was not able to, but you talk about a guy that comes into the NFL and double-digit sacks right out of the gate. Like, I don't know. That's kind of where my mind is starting to go. And I know that's kind of, you don't want to get yourself too excited about second round picks. I'm usually pretty guarded about rookies in general and kind of production that you're going to get from them. But all the ball knowers, all the tape heads that I listen to talk about this guy, it makes me feel like, why not throw him in there right away? And you've got Kyle Van Noy, who's getting a little bit older, and you're going to need to spell him in certain spots. And this guy is pretty much perfect for that with, the rocket ship that's kind of strapped to his back is another term I've heard used about Mike Green. So yeah, if I were them, I'd throw him right into the fire and see what you got.
Yeah, there's no harm in doing it, especially because this is not a project player. And that's what the Ravens needed to draft anyway. Malachi Starks and Mike Green, they're NFL-ready players. We've heard it with Malachi a ton. Like, playing at Georgia gets you ready for the NFL. And Mike Green, the production was there. He showed it against smaller schools. And obviously, the tape against Ohio State is really good. Like, you have it on film. And not only that, you now have it in the preseason with Mike Green. So I would hope he gets run early. I wouldn't be shocked if they started him off a little slow and then gradually built him up. But my bold prediction is by the end of the season, Mike Green is going to be the Ravens' best pass rusher on the roster. And that's how he will be talked about. In terms of talent, I think the potential, obviously, that's there. But, I said that about Zay in his rookie season, Jake. And I was, Zay's going to be the best wide receiver. And I've probably told you this story before. He's going to be the best wide receiver on the Ravens by the time his rookie season was over. He was the best wide receiver on that team by the time week 1 ended. So I think that you could have a similar trajectory.
I was going to say, it's like, wow, man, I think the Seabiscuit horse is looking pretty good. He might actually win this race.
I tell you, there's a lot to like about this Ravens roster, a lot to like about the Ravens edge room. And of course, there's a lot to like about the Ravens signing Kyle Hamilton to an extension. So we're going to talk about that, the Ravens roster being finalized, if there are any shocks from Jake on that, and then as well as what could the Ravens do moving forward? Is there another extension potentially on the horizon? So stay tuned for that. We have a lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Now, I put up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. Now, the app made all that super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying, and honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I have bought tickets in the past. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. And for this weekend, PrizePicks is offering major max discount. So if you want the NFL side of that, Dak Prescott, that max discount, obviously, for that Thursday, September 4th game. With the Eagles, that is set at 0.5 passing yards. You have to get in on that action. And, of course, I'm super pumped for this season for football. You got Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, everybody. And, of course, you got to go on PrizePicks to see all that they have to offer. PrizePicks is super simple to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Jake Louque still diving into the Ravens content and coverage here with you. It's crazy. It doesn't even feel like it's September yet. I know we're a couple days away here, but, football's in the air.
Dude, are you stepping outside this week?
It's getting a little frisky. It's getting a little frisky outside.
I've had the windows open the last couple of nights. Maybe that was probably not the right move because I'm feeling the allergies now. It's cold outside. It's a little, it's crisp, man. I'm sure we're gonna go back to 90-degree weather at some point where I think we're just in false fall right now, as they call it. But it's feeling like football right now to me.
Yeah, it's time has flown by. I think that's where it's like, are we really here? Are we really having things? Is it really about a week and a half away now? A little less than that from Ravens season. I mean, before we get into the Kyle Hamilton extension, I mean, how are you feeling about the Buffalo? Now we can talk about week one. How are you feeling about the Bills game? I mean, I don't know if you feel like Isaiah likely is going to return by week one. The Bills also dealing with their injury situation with Khalil Shakir. Maybe both players don't play in that game. We know the storylines. I don't have to tell you about those storylines with the revenge and, getting right. Didn't happen last year by a toe. We saw what the Ravens did in the regular season last year to Buffalo, though. I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be looking much more like the playoff game than that regular season game last year. We'll see about my prediction, but yeah, I'm expecting a close one, a competitive one. You mentioned some of the storylines I said on our show that came out today, or I guess last night we recorded it live. Expecting a pretty big start from Mark Andrews here, like coming into the year healthy. He's got the opportunity right in front of him with Likely, who I don't think is going to be starting out the year on the roster. I think he'll probably be sitting for a couple of weeks. And, as much as it hurt to see him have not only the drop, which I can almost kind of forgive, but obviously the fumble, I think really was the big thing that killed the Ravens in that game from Andrews. Just a pretty disastrous performance from him. He has not played up to par in the playoffs pretty much throughout his entire career, but man, regular season's always kind of been his bag. He has always been Lamar's dude, as much as everyone wants to talk about Lamar not having the X receiver. Can we get Lamar's Terrell Owens, this, that, and the other? I think Mark Andrews kind of quietly always has been that guy for him, just in a different way than, quarterbacks with wide receivers are. It was a tight end for him all along. And yeah, I don't expect him in a Ravens uniform beyond this season. So I think that even plays into it as well, where it's like, hey, I want to go get a big contract. I want like the Panthers or like the Patriots or the Titans, one of these teams with young quarterbacks to come and pay me to be a security blanket. Like that's going to be at the top of his mind too. One last big payday. So yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be watching in these first couple of weeks, and particularly against Buffalo. I think that's going to be on his mind, man. That's a traumatic thing to happen in your life, to have a performance like that and a drop like that on the big stage. I'm sure he's still kind of feeling it, and he's probably ready to put it behind him. Only way to do that is to go out and redeem yourself on the field.
Yeah, I mean, emotions are going to be, I think, sky high for him, and I think we all anticipate that. I'm with you. I don't expect him back in Baltimore next season, but I think that kind of adds to and like Kyle Hamilton said, when you have Lamar, you always have a chance. But rosters like this one don't come around very often that the Ravens have built. It's a credit to Eric DeCosta, the Ravens, the front office staff to be able to build what they have, scouting, obviously, but you do have to take advantage of it. And so the Ravens, they signed Kyle Hamilton to that 4-year, $100.4 million extension, 82 of that guaranteed for injury. The guaranteed money is about 40 million more than the next guaranteed person in terms of that regard. And then you also have the money per year at 25. Kirby Joseph was the one in Detroit that had about 21-ish. So that's about $4 million more per season for Kyle Hamilton, as opposed to what Kirby Joseph made. I mean, very well deserved. I don't think there's a player in the NFL like Kyle Hamilton right now in terms of what he could do on the football field. So he kind of resets the safety market, but at the same time, Kyle Hamilton, I think, just has a different market than every other player at his position.
Yeah, no, 100%. It is staggering seeing his name and then the second name there, and it's like, essentially a Grand Canyon. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like worth every penny. Like the guy is an absolute pterodactyl out there. Just with the ground that he's able to cover and the wingspan and coming, playing up in the box and just absolutely blowing up run plays and just ripping his helmet off like he's Maximus. And, are you not entertained? And then on the very next play, he'll be like down the field. I still think about that play against San Francisco on the Christmas night game. He had 2 interceptions, the second of which not a lot of people really, I need to see you and Ramey and some of these guys clipping this one a little more often, where he's like pinned on the ground. I think he gets washed out in a run play. The play is developing, pops back up, runs into like the screen from off screen. And as the ball pops into the air, he picks that one off. He's running around. It's like, man, this guy is like a bat out of hell. He's literally like Taz at the safety position somehow. But somehow smoother to watch than that, cooler to watch than that. He truly is like a Ken Griffey Jr. type figure. And I love him to death. So thrilled for him.
I'm gonna put that one out there just for you on the socials. I'll get that clip out there because I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's like the Ravens have a lot of high motor guys on this team. Like they are just go until the whistle is blown, and even a little past the whistle in some cases as well. So that's playing like a Raven, and I absolutely love it.
Practice like you play, man. Maybe that's where those practices come into the picture.
Yeah, you know what? But look at that, just absolutely molding a show together. Everything flows into one. That look at that. Look at us go, Jake. We're doing a good job here. Now, I have a handy dandy extension tracker, and I want to kind of dive into this a little bit too, because we know, and I'll bring it here. Derrick Henry, Rashod Bateman, Kyle Hamilton, all of these three are signed. If you want to throw Ronnie into this equation as well, he was a free agent, but Ronnie Stanley also extended. The other names that you can look at here: Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Tyler Linderbaum, Travis Jones, Odafe Owe, Marlon Humphrey. You want to also throw a guy like Jaire, who is obviously on a 1-year deal for the Ravens, or they want to extend him after this season. If you want to look very far down the line, Roquan's deal, I think he's up in 3 years, but they have him out after 2. I'm not really factoring him in there right now. Out of those guys, or maybe others as well, you mentioned Mark Andrews. I kind of think Odafe Owe is probably going to price himself out in some way, shape, or form, especially just how edges are getting paid right now. We just saw it with Parsons, although not expecting Owe to get $50 million a season or anything like that. Andrews and Owe are the two I'm not expecting back. What do you think of Travis Jones prices himself out? Do you think that the Ravens don't want to pay a wide receiver what Zay is probably going to command? How many of these guys realistically can Baltimore actually keep?
Man, I probably default to 2. I think if I were them, I would start with Zay Flowers. Like, I just feel like the impact that he brings to this offense can't be understated, man. I mean, think about before 2023, they really just were not doing the right thing at wide receiver. I know that they had drafted they were still kind of clinging on to the experiments of Hollywood Brown and who's our boy Miles Boykin there. It's like, drafted 2 guys in the first and third round. We're good for a decade. It's like, no, it's really not how it works. And obviously they get rid of Hollywood Brown at one point. Boykin just kind of fades out, whatever. And they just, man, like that 2022 receiving core was rough. And finally, it just felt like it was they just went and they drafted a serious option, and they just finally got one of these things right. And the impact that he's had overall, I mean, he probably is a huge help to this running game. I think he's a huge help to clearing out space for Isaiah Likely, who's somehow, just able to find space in the soft spots and just rumble down the field. And I don't know, I think he brings a total dynamic element that's awesome. I don't think far behind that for me would be Linderbaum. You could flip the 2 of them if you want. I just feel like center is like a position they don't really seem to actually value all that much. Like interior offensive line, I feel like they pride themselves on their ability to just figure it out. But I think Linderbaum is that good where you'd really want to consider it. I did see that Pretty Ricky, the Twitter account that has maybe gotten some things wrong lately, but he was, to his credit, all over this Parsons to the Packers thing a couple of days ago. So that was big. I think he put it out there that Linderbaum unlikely to sign for anything less than $20 million a year, which I think that's a tough ask for a center. I'm not exactly sure who the top paid one right now. I want to say it's Creed Humphrey.
It's Creed Humphrey. He's at $18 million a year.
$18 million. Yeah. Okay. So it'd be a couple million more than Creed Humphrey. Yeah, I mean, it's market value. It's exactly what you're going for. And the stuff Linderbaum does for their run game, I think in particular is really special. It'd be tough to make it work with both him and Flowers. But yeah, I would go with those 2 guys. And then for as much as they pride themselves on figuring it out on interior offensive line, I think it's pretty similar with interior defensive line. And if I had to let 3 of these guys, or, one of these 3 guys walk, I'd probably let Jones walk, sign the other 2, but they're all, valuable. You could make a case to me any which way.
Yeah, and I think, with what Lamar's deal looks like, because I think everybody just assumes that's going to happen at some point, with the restructuring the $70 million cap hit for next season, you have some wiggle room. But of course, as Eric DeCosta said, they're going to have to let some good players leave. It kind of is what it is in that regard. So a stacked roster, it's a good problem to have, but you're going to have to let some good guys walk out of the building. And for the Ravens, a really important season coming up, and they have the roster to make some noise. We'll see if it ends up happening that way, though. But Jake, I appreciate you. Thanks for popping on. Before I let you go, be sure, please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yep. Exit 52 podcast on YouTube and podcast platforms. We're still doing Orioles about once a week. Things have kind of really faded off for them, unfortunately, this season. So we're dialing back our coverage a little bit, and it's couldn't happen at a better time with Ravens cranking back up. We do those 3 times a week in season where we preview each game. We react to each game, usually the day of, night of, whatever it might be. And then we have a midweek episode where we're a little more level headed, and it's kind of just, straight analysis rather than kind of the emotional, overly emotional at times takes we can give immediately in the aftermath of games. So yep, that's coming. Like I said, at Exit 52 Podcast YouTube channel. You can find us at Exit 52 Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, if you want to find clips, all that good stuff. And then I'm at Jake Louque. That's Louque on Twitter as well.
There you have it. Jake does great work. Be sure to check him out, support his stuff. All the links in the description down below. Jake, I appreciate you as always. Thanks so much for hopping on. And I appreciate everybody for watching and listening today on Locked On Ravens. Take a 2-day break unless there's something crazy that goes on, maybe a bonus episode or 2 over the weekend. Who knows what's going on here on Locked On Ravens? What we do know is there's Ravens content 5 days a week plus more. So be sure on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.